Thank you first and foremost for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on this webinar. We have quite a few school board members on the line here, and we also share to those who can't make it so they can record that. So we'll try to get the word out to our school board family. And happy Valentine's Day to you.
Thank you a lot, Sally. I appreciate it very much. Let me apologize again for my tardiness. We should know how to do all this by now, but it seems as if it's a challenge from time to time. But thanks for inviting me today. It's great to be with school board members from across our state. Let me thank each of them for all that they do in an attitude of service to their community and what they do for children and students and parents and teachers in their communities, their willingness to serve and be educated, make wise decisions on behalf of their school system. So it's exciting for me to be with you today, and I look forward to answering questions and having a few minutes to visit. So I hope everything else is going well with your conference.
Oh, well, thank you very much so. And I will say, it is the love of the job, the love of what we do. I will tell you, when we came to visit you, and Senator Reed is a gracious host. When we were doing our legislative meetings, Bart and I, we were treated to see your lovely home and your bride, which I think was your high school sweetheart. And so
I've got to tell this one story. Today, 40 years ago, was the first date for my wife, Mitzi, and I. She invited me to a Valentine banquet at her church.
Oh.
And in 1982, that was our first date. So yeah, today's a special day.
Well, that is, and you can't say that you forget when the first date is.
That's right. Always reminded every Valentine's Day.
Well, of course, I know family is very important to you as well, but you've got some education connections in your family too. Would you like to share with our school board members your perspective?
Sure. My sister for 20 years has been a teacher, and the majority of her time was spent as a kindergarten teacher. She's done a great job, actually been involved in some pre-K as well, but she gives me good information on things associated with what's going on at school. Also, my mom was the manager of the lunchroom at the middle school where I grew up in Cordova, Alabama. And so my mom helped put me through college, fixing good food for a lot of little kids in the middle school there in Cordova for a long, long time. So we've had some connection in our family with the education process. Not only did my three sons, who were 27, 27, and 25, they all got a great education in the Jasper City Schools and our public schools in our area. But my wife and I are products of the public school. And so we appreciate the process and the opportunity to, again, be with you today.
All right. So yeah, education is near and dear. So now you're in the political world. And of course, for our school board members, Senator Reed was first elected to the Senate in 2010 and served as majority leader from 2015 to 21. In February 2021, his legislative colleagues unanimously elected him to the position of Senate Pro Tem, which is the second highest ranking leadership position in the Alabama Senate. And so that's quite an accomplishment to get that kind of honor from your peers. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into politics?
Well, I'm that kid that was the president of the 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade class, okay? I grew up in Walker County in Cordova, Alabama. I had a great experience growing up with a wonderful family and great school and great church. And as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I were high school sweethearts. Moved on to the University of Alabama, got a business education, and had been a businessman for 30 years. Never ran for public office until 2010. It'd been something that had been an interest of mine for a long time, but it's been a great privilege and a great honor, and to be elected as the majority leader by your colleagues and then elected as president of the body by your colleagues is certainly something I take very seriously. It's a great honor and a privilege for me. I get all kinds of opportunities of service for those across our state, as well as in my district, Senate District 5, which is Walker County, Winston County, Fayette County, Jefferson, and Tuscaloosa counties. So that's kind of the area where I stay focused as far as my district, but look to serve across our state and doing good work with my colleagues. And so it's a privilege for me to serve, and exciting for me to continue to be in a role to hopefully make a difference. You know, politics is something I've had people ask me before, why in the world do you want to do that? And I said, you know what? Somebody needs to do it. It's very important. It's worth it. So it's been a great privilege for me, and I hope I continue to have something to offer.
Well, I think our school board members can relate to that too. You know, someone's got to do it. It's very important. So this is an interesting time to be, leading the Senate. I mean, we have phenomenal economic growth. Of course, there's lots of federal money. Let's talk a little bit about the state's fiscal outlook for the next year or so.
Well, the good news is the state's fiscal position is very positive. I think that is a result of a very intentional approach by the legislature over the last several years to be very focused on fiscal responsibility and being able to budget in a very fiscally responsible way. The pandemic has hurt us as it has those across our state. It doesn't mean that we've been immune by any means. But compared to other states, Alabama's economy has continued to be very robust. That is evidence to the people of Alabama, the resiliency of our people, and our ability to work and push forward even in the midst of difficult circumstances. And so I am proud of where the state is. As a result of moving through those times, we've been very focused on trying to use resources in state government to pay back all the rainy day funds and strengthen the rolling reserve and all the things that happened back during the Great Recession moving forward over the last 10 years to where Alabama borrowed almost $1 billion from herself during those difficult times, drained all the rainy day funds in every category. But the good news is we've refilled all of those rainy day funds. We've added even other rainy day funds that are important to the state, and Alabama has paid herself back almost $900 million. And so that's been positive to put us in a good position. Then you have all the federal money, and we'll think about federal resources. We just finished with ARPA round one, the Recovery Act funds. Before that, we had CARES Act resources. Alabama's ARPA funds just recently was about $1 billion. Then we're going to have budgets, the education and the general fund, that are both going to be well funded, not sustainably funded. The resources we've got now are not going to be there from now on, but one-time resources in the budgets based on the economy's growth looks very positive. Then we'll move on in probably a June, July timeframe to ARPA round two, which will be another $1.1 billion from the federal government that the Alabama legislature will allocate. Plus, before the year is out, we'll have infrastructure legislation that was passed by Congress, and we don't know what the billion number is going to be on that for roads, bridges, airports, infrastructure of all kinds. But those resources are coming too. So we've been very fiscally responsible. The state's in a good position fiscally. We've got a lot of very important decisions to make with these resources that are coming to the state. I expect that as we see inflation, we see issues with the stock market, so forth, the fact that good times will be ours to enjoy forever is not reality. There will be difficult days in our future, I'm confident. But the goal is being able to put ourselves in a place where we can weather the storm as best we can. You know, we've not had proration, which I know is a bad word for educators, especially school board members. We've not experienced proration in a decade. So that's great news. We will continue to be fiscally responsible moving forward, but at the same time, trying to do right by our educators. We've had multiple years now to where we've had raises for education staff, and I don't think this year will be an exception. I think there will be a raise again for educators in the coming budget. So we've done good things fiscally. We've put ourselves in a good position. Alabama's in a place for a good foundation for the 21st century growth that we all want, and that's going to be very important for educators.
Absolutely. I think it really sounds with all the various pots of money, there's really an opportunity to invest in our future too. And it sounds, appreciate the very sound approach that the legislature has taken. So you mentioned pay raises and educators. Right now, I think the proposal on the table, or the governor's recommending 4%. Can you tell us how the Senate sees that, or some of the things you'd like to do from the Senate side in terms of rewarding employees?
I've had some conversations with the governor about those numbers. Also, Director Bill Poole, who you all recognize just shortly ago, was the budget chair in the House of Representatives for the education budget. Director Poole and I are great personal friends and work very closely together and have for many years. I think the 4% number is a good number. I think it is one of the highest numbers we've seen as a percentage in a long time for educators in a single year as far as an increase. I'm an advocate of being able to make sure that we look at all areas of education staff. That is very important. It's just as difficult to get lunchroom workers and bus drivers, certainly in this environment, as we've seen in a long time. And I know that's a real challenge for school board members that have to deal with those issues. But I think the 4% number in the Senate is going to be a solid one. I think we also may have other discussions from a personnel perspective. Are they spending some of these resources? I think there's a lot of discussion about the Tier 2 program, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, a lot of discussion back and forth. What do we need to do? I think our best approach has been to try and fix the Tier 2 system. As we see a lot of times in government, when you try to correct things, maybe the pendulum swings too far in one direction. We definitely had serious problems with the retirement systems of Alabama at one point. We had to make difficult decisions to be able to put ourselves in a good place. I think that school boards, school superintendents, others have worked diligently in looking for ways that we can attract and retain talent in the education ranks, and that is very important to all of us. The state's spent a lot of money on programs like the TEAMS program, which is very important for STEM education and having certified teachers in those math and science classrooms. I think you'll hear some more about that. I know Senator Orr has a program related to math that is going to be also another program that is focused on what are we doing in math, how can we improve that. I think there'll be more debate on that. I don't think that discussion is finalized yet, but I do think there's a good idea in being able to use resources to focus on targeted areas that we know are so important to our students' education. As far as the Tier 2 program, we had already addressed one of the major planks of that as a problem where educators were able to hold on to their days that they had accrued. That was a big problem. Obviously, if you tell them, hey, you got to take it before the end of the year, well, they're going to take it, and then you've got to find a substitute, of which you can't find, and all those issues become real challenges. And who suffers? The children, really. I mean, so that was an issue that we tried to address and tried to make sure that we were looking at. We have dealt with that. I think now the retirement age is an issue we're looking at. The 30-year retirement topic, which is very different than what it was before, but it doesn't go as far as to saying everybody's got to teach till they're 62 years old. So I think there's some debate going on there. We have strong support in the Senate. At the same time, we've got some legislators that are very fiscally focused and feel like that we've made some great progress. We don't want to have the pendulum swing too far back in the other direction to where we lose the strong solvency that we've created in conjunction with the educators themselves in regards to the retirement systems of Alabama. So I think that you're going to see raises. I think there'll be more debate on other issues of specialty focus for educators like the TEAMS Act and others. I think there's going to be some real discussion about the Literacy Act and some requirements on delay for the Literacy Act just because of the virus. There's some debate currently going back and forth as to, okay, if you're going to delay it, how long do you delay it? I've not had educators come to me and say, oh, we don't like the Literacy Act. They like the idea. They think it's a very positive one, but it must be done in the right time frame. We're going to have to appropriately fund it to make sure that it can accomplish the goals. So a lot of discussions there, and I think there'll be some continued review on those topics, Sally.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of educations popping this session, and you touched on a lot of them. I'd like to go back and on tier two, we appreciate your comments. And man, the being able to accumulate sick leave was huge. It has been, it has something that we see movement on in the House, but hopefully 30-year retirement, I know, is very important to our folks. There's some other issues. Bills that have been introduced that we've talked to retirement about, letting retirees come back into the system, without penalty. And certainly that is something, we'd like to see. Do you have a sense of where the Senate might be on one of any of those bills?
I think the idea of allowing retirees to come back to where they're given an opportunity to where if they decide to come back, there's not walls and walls of penalty in regards to them stepping back and being able to offer the skill set that they have to students, even just for a few years, especially now that we've got real challenges. I think that's a good idea. I would be supportive of that. I know it has to be managed the right way. I know the retirement systems of Alabama have some ideas on exactly how we need to do that, but it's important for school boards and for principals trying to manage their schools. If you've got great retirees that are still willing to be committed to trying to help and teach students, especially in some of the work that we're going to have to be doing in engaging students to bring them up to speed, in that many of them have not been able to be at the schoolhouse. We've suffered with working on things from a viral standpoint, digital, learning, all that. I think that there's a good time now for us to look at helping retired educators continue to be productive if they want to be. So I would be supportive of that as well.
Well, we were delighted to hear. We were at a briefing the other day, and retirement systems indicate they could do this in a way that wouldn't hurt the retirement systems. But certainly, it's a short-term strategy for those things. Like the Teams Act are certainly longer-term approaches to attract something. So we appreciate that. At one point, we heard there might be some discussion to expand, or take the Teams Act approach to some of the other difficult areas. And so we would be very favorably inclined to support that. Any talk in the Senate?
Well, I think there's some discussion about that. I mean, if you look at other areas, special ed's a great area. You have to have a certified special ed teacher to be in the classroom with that child that requires those special instruction. But we don't have enough of those teachers in our schools, as you all well know. Another one is career tech instruction. How do you get a high quality machinist to come and teach our young men and women how to have the trades they need when that individual can go make twice the income in private business? So it's real difficult. I think the Teams Act gave us an option to be able to, with everyone pretty much in agreement, we can modify the pay scale in ways that address the needs of the market, which I know are very important to school board members, because they're given the task of figuring out how do we get educators to be in their place and do their job, and how do we manage them, and do we incentivize them in different ways? What is the state doing to help us with that? So all those are issues that continue to be important, and a lot of discussion is going on in those areas. Now, when you talk about that, we've talked about being fiscally responsible. Remember, the Teams Act right off the bat was $50 million. So when you begin to think about some of those areas, there's a lot of financial resources that have to be dedicated to those. So we want to make sure we're spending money in the right places, that we're not just jumping to conclusions on, hey, do this, do that, that we get good feedback from those that are in the field. But I do think that there are other discussions related to those ideas.
Very encouraging. Well, you mentioned financial resources, and you knew, I couldn't let this discussion go without asking. The school board community is very concerned about Senators Marsh's Parent Choice Act. There's been a lot of discussion, but as it's currently written right now, it would be a huge hit to the ETF. Over $500 million. Where do you see that bill going? In the Senate and overall throughout the legislature?
Well, that bill has created quite a bit of conversation, as you can well imagine, both House and Senate and throughout the education community, as well as with parents and homeschoolers and private schools and Catholic schools and on and on. The idea of having a variety of different options that are available for education of children is something that I think generally is supported by the Alabama legislature. We've done some things in the past, like public charter schools and, looking at other options that are ways that we can offer different solutions to make sure that children are given different kinds of options that are important for their education. I am not a supporter of, in the current form, looking at taking what would be over $500 million away from the public education system and allow it to be available in a different way to where that money comes away from the public schools. I think that's a real challenge. I think many legislators feel that same way, but it doesn't negate the fact that Senator Marsh has done a good job in continuing to start and move forward conversations about what are our outcomes. We know they're not positive. We've got to do things differently. We've got to find ways to increase the educational quality that's offered across our state. So if that's the case and everybody agrees to that, then what are the ways that we do that? I think this discussion is just one option to be reviewed. I think the biggest challenge with the legislation is the fact that there would be enormous resources coming away from school systems across our state. And that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. There's been some discussion that may moderate. There may be some different thoughts on how we would do that, and maybe the program would start at a later time. I think all that's going to be discussed. My suggestion has been that Senate leaders, as well as House leaders, those that are from each end of the spectrum related to their thoughts on this, continue to get together in working groups and try to think about what are good options for us, what are things we need to be doing. I'll mention this to you, Sally. When you and Mark visited at my home, we talked about this issue, which I think is important. There's some good things, really good things going on in education in Alabama. However, we don't do a very good job of promoting that. We don't tell our story very well at all. You can't continue to be just in defense mode. We don't like this idea when good ideas are happening and we're not really telling the story. Maybe that work is being done better at the local level with local school boards, local superintendents. But statewide, some of the things that are important that we can point to as accomplishments, we're not really telling that story very well. And I've indicated that that is an important area for the Department of Education, and have expressed that to Eric Mackey, who's a good friend of mine, that we've, when you're in a public environment, if you don't blow your own horn, either it's not going to be blown or somebody will blow it wrong. I think educators have to step forward in that, be able to say, we've got problems, yes. We've got good ideas, and these are things we're doing that are working. Now, do we need to do other things? Are there other options? Do we all want our scores to be better? Of course. So let's work collaboratively in finding ways to be able to do that, rather than let's look for ideas that are really shaking things up in a significant way. Then you wind up with a bunch of challenge back and forth. Let's look to talk about good things that we're already doing. Who knows? Those good things that are in certain areas, we may want to duplicate them in others. Some of the good things that we've already talked about, like the Teams Act, for instance, which I think is a great idea. That started somewhere. I mean, that idea started with someone to come up with, hey, these are some good thoughts and good ideas. How do we collaborate on this and maybe do it statewide or do it in a different way that allow it to be a benefit to us? So I think those discussions are areas that we need to stay engaged on.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned earlier, and you talked about doing something differently, and of course, acknowledging where we're not performing well. So that brings to mind Senator Orr's Numeracy Act. And of course, it's designed to improve math proficiency in K through 5, and it's been in the headlines a lot too. Um, uh, Senator Orr himself in committee the other week mentioned the fact that it's got a hefty price tag. So how do you see that playing out, and the thoughts of the Senate on that issue?
Well, I think the idea of that approach by Senator Orr has been well received in the Senate. I think the question of, do we want to do all of this now? Okay, has come up. Is this a program that we want to do in certain areas to test it, to see how it works, and maybe we don't do all of it at one time? Then again, you've got folks on the other side that say we don't have a moment to waste. I mean, we know that our math scores are terrible. We've got to move in a positive direction. So, let's look at trying to get this going. So there will be continued debate on that. I think Senator Orr is open to the debate, open to the discussion, recognizes as he works with Representative Garrett, who's the chairman in the House for the education budget, that in finding the resources to do it the right way, it requires a lot of additional discussion and debate. I just talked with Senator Orr last week and about this legislation. He told me that he was continuing to get good information from a lot of sources and that he was very excited about that rated where people were talking about ways and options to make his bill better and work on things in a way that he felt like were going to be very productive. So that's the process. We introduce legislation to get people's engagement, get their feedback, and you wind up seeing where things go. But I think this is a good idea. I think there's continued work that needs to be done on the legislation based on my discussions with Senator Orr.
And I will say, Senator, in our conversation with Senator Orr, we spent about 30 minutes with him after the bill, and he was very receptive to our comments, and have since talked with Dr. Mackey. And the idea is there's some areas that might need some smoothing over or retooling, because while we all know we need to do more in math, the idea that there is a plethora of math teachers and coaches out there, that is part of one of our implementation hurdles with that, is that where can we find these people, to help us, take the message to our students. So we'll appreciate the opportunity to continue to work on that. And of course, Dr. Mackey will be bringing the education family to do just that. So speaking of the education budget, it starts in the House this year, I think. So what kind
That's
of
correct.
what kind of time frame are we looking at it? When do you anticipate it being in the Senate, and when will our folks know exactly what we have to spend for the next year?
I think that based on feedback I've gotten from Senator Orr and also conversations with Representative Garrett, is they're looking to move the education budget a little sooner than they have in years past, which I think is a good idea. There's already been some diligent work with those men working with each other and making sure that the budget is going to be in a good place coming out of the House, to where the amount of change that would be added in the Senate would just be a minimum level. And so I think that, of course, this is, the political process. Things can go in the ditch quick, but I think we're moving in a positive way. The attitude is get going. We had the special session on the Recovery Act resources. Once we finished that, I thought separating those resources away from the education and the general fund budgets was a wise decision. And that was my idea to work on that. The governor and the speaker felt like it was a good idea as well. Now we're working on the budgets. The first question that I've been asked by many of my legislative colleagues, of course, is when's going to come up for passage, and when are we going to end the session? So that's always the question. I think that trying to move things a little sooner rather than later, in the fact that it is an election year, that's always of interest. We started earlier in that we started in January, which is the last year of a 4-year term. We start in January, which is earlier. So I think the attitude in trying to move things along quickly is what we're going to see.
All right. Well, yeah, that. And of course, the other big question is when is spring break too, right?
Spring break has already been discussed and has been announced. So spring break for the legislature is going to be the week of March 21.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of the budget, one of the things we heard from our members, of course, we like full funding of all education programs, but right now with the Advancement and Technology Fund, certainly allows us to have some additional funds for qualified expenditures, facilities, technology, instructional supplies, etc. Senator Orr has introduced a bill that AASB has been working with him on that would add to this list of permissible expenditures or qualified expenditures, capital outlay or new construction as a qualified expense. Can you give us your thoughts about this bill? Because one of our reasons I'll share with you for bringing this is the impact that inflation is having. We've had a bond issue, which we are very grateful, but costs are going up. You know, they were going up anyway, and then of course inflation has really gotten a hold of things. So do you see this having some movement in the Senate?
I do think it's going to have movement. I am supportive. I think of adding the capital element there is important. If school boards are in a position to where they can manage those resources and they want to use it in that way, I think that's important. I think an overall theme related to our budgets this year, the ARPA funds, round one, round two, I think all of that is focused on investments. How can we take resources? Look, I've been in the legislature now. This year I'm going to be finishing my third term, so it'll be 12 years. I have been here in the legislature where we did not have any resources at all. I mean, 10, 11, 12, wow, things were tough, as your board members that were there at that time can attest. And here we are in a scenario where, my goodness, I mean, I just got through rolling off the different elements of CARES and ARPA 1, ARPA 2, infrastructure, budgets, economy strong, those kinds of things. I like having resources a lot more than not having resources, okay? But I think the attitude that we have to be very careful is that we're not just spending money because we have it. We need to use the resources in a very intentional way and making sure that we're making investments for the future, for our communities, for our schools, for the students that we serve, for the families that we serve. And so I think in looking at adding some capital elements to what some of these resources can be used for is just a wise thought. If that's something that can be used and that's the best use of some of these resources in some scenarios, then I think that there should be the openness to be able to allow that.
Okay, well, thank you. That's good news, because while we have been the beneficiaries of a lot of funds, you know, it is restricted. And so sometimes you find, even with all this money, that there are gaps out there and things that you'd like to do at the local level. All
Sure.
right, I can't let you go without asking, you had incredible enthusiasm that was also matched with another lawmaker we talked about the exciting things Alabama's doing in terms of innovation and the Hoover Institute report. And that's one of the things I don't think our board members know a lot about, and I'm going to work on correcting that. But can you give a little bit of an overview of what's happening and how exciting that is for our state?
Well, I certainly can. I've learned a great deal. We're all in a process, we better be, where we're learning every day, and new things are ours to enjoy and try to digest. The governor of Alabama put together the Innovation Commission, and it was headed by Bill. He was the chair, I was the vice chair. She put together 15 of some of the brightest and most capable startup entrepreneurial minds in the state of Alabama. And we began to look at, if we're going to engage Alabama's economy moving forward in an entrepreneurial startup as is going on in other states across the country. Where does Alabama fit? What are our strengths? What are our challenges? What are things that we can do to get government out of the way and allow entrepreneurs to be successful and continue to grow our economy? So that was kind of our mission. Along with that, we had an advisory council that the governor had invited several folks to participate, including Zeke Smith from Alabama Power, who was the chair of that group. The group included folks like Greg Canfield, who's the Alabama Secretary of Commerce, as well as Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Dr. Rice is the chairwoman of the Hoover Institution at Stanford University in California. And so as a part of that, she offered the opportunity for Stanford to do all types of research on Alabama's economy, Alabama's education, issues associated with the attraction and retention of all kinds of different educated folks that are in our area, many of them that come to Alabama, get a great education, and then leave and go back to another state or go back home. How can we retain many of those folks as engineers or developers or educators or whatever? So they gave a great report that talked about all of the exciting things that Alabama has as assets and resources. And as I said earlier, we all need to do a better job in promoting and marketing our successes. Alabama has done a poor job of being able to talk about how well prepared we are to attract entrepreneurs and startup business owners in the high-tech space. The Hoover Institute came back with several different surveys. One of those was, if you're an entrepreneur, age 25 to 40, what are you looking for? Are you going to go to Alabama or Colorado or California, or where do you want to go to start your business? If you can go anywhere, what would be your decision? Came back that they want three things, these young folks, and I should have known some of this. I mean, I've got three millennials that are my sons. But number one, they want a good business opportunity, and we've got it for them in Alabama. I mean, you've got great opportunities here. Some of our laws related to new businesses are very aggressive, so they can have that. Number two, they want communities that they can be a part of. You know, it's a little different from my generation. I mean, my sons, they're willing to buy a pair of socks because the company's going to give a pair of socks to somebody else. You know, I mean, those were things in the 1980s when I grew up. We didn't think about a lot about those kinds of things. But anyway, young folks these days, they're very focused on that, and I'm glad they are. But I mean, look, that is right in the wheelhouse of good old Alabama. I mean, rural communities that'll love you to death and provide you great education for your children and be able to offer you a beautiful home that is a lot less costly than what you may find in San Francisco or other places. So the third thing that they're looking for is outdoor activities. Alabama has more navigable waterways than any other state in America. And so they're interested in biking and hiking and kayaking. I mean, things I don't do, but they do, and they love it, and outdoor activities. Alabama the Beautiful, we're in a great place to offer a lot of these things. So now the commission's work has finished. The Hoover Institute work has finished. There is go to a website called Innovate Alabama, and you can see a lot of this information there. The report was given to the governor in October of 21. The Hoover Institution finished their report, which had a huge section on education and a comparison of Alabama's education to other states on research that they've done all across America. And be glad to get that information, Sally, and provide to you so that you can provide to school board members. But now the reports are finished. We've created the Innovation Corporation, which is going to be a public-private entity to kind of carry some of these ideas forward to try and attract these bright, capable folks, or hold on to them right here in Alabama and have them start businesses here and continue to add to and grow our economy. And the more successful they are, the more resources that go right into Alabama's education budget for all the things that we know are so important for supporting our students. So it's a big deal. It's been a great learning experience for me, so I appreciate you asking about it. I've had a lot of fun with it. More to come on Alabama's Innovation Corporation and Innovate Alabama.
Well, we'll stay tuned on that one and share that. I have to say, I've downloaded the report. It is big. I haven't made all the way through it, but it is exciting to see that future, future approach and really building the infrastructure. So I've asked you a lot of questions and we've covered a lot of territory. Are there any other education priorities or issues you'd like to mention with our school board members on the line?
Well, let me just say again how much I appreciate the school board members and what they do. I think about the school board members in the 6 systems that I represent in my district and the hard work that they do. And I hear from them from time to time. I think that it is very important that legislative members hear from their school board members in the school systems in their districts. We don't understand what's going on. We need good quality information from school board members to understand what are the things that are working, what are the things that aren't, what are the things you think are great, what are the things you think aren't. That's going to be very important. Sally, you and Bart and your whole team do a great job in helping keep us in the legislature informed on things that are important to education and in particular school boards and how we can do things that are going to allow things to be better for school systems and allow those board members to better serve their communities. So we've talked about a lot of education topics. My job as president is to keep the trains running on time and trying to move things forward and help folks be able to have the opportunity to debate all the ideas that they have. So, as is always the case, education is a top priority in the discussions that go on with the Alabama legislature in every session, and it absolutely should be. And as long as I'm in the role that I'm in, it will continue to be. And I look forward, as I've discussed with you and Bart from our visit, more discussions in the future, bringing education groups together from all different thoughts and ideas on figuring out how can we work collaboratively to do things better and be able to produce a better quality product. That's everybody's goal. That's everybody's interest. So how do we take all of the great intellect that's available to us, the experiences from across our state, and be able to pull them together in a way that allows us to all do our jobs better? So I just appreciate what your members do and what your team does to give information to our senators. And I'll look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. And just so our members know, I didn't ask you to say that about keeping in contact, but it really is important that local perspective, and that it's a trusted relationship. So we appreciate all you do. We especially appreciate the fact that Senate Pro Tem is like trying to herd cats sometimes. So it takes patience, it takes diplomacy, and it takes a lot of skill, and you do that. So thank you so much for your generous gift of your time today, and hopefully you'll have a wonderful day.
Well, I hope you all have a good day. God bless you all. Thanks again for what you do, and look forward to seeing you when you come visit us in Montgomery.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Senator.
Bye-bye.